Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. I'm Jeanie Ryce, your co-host, along with Dr. Tim Hayes, and we welcome you to the show. Today is Wednesday, January 27th, 2016, and this is going to be our Addiction Wednesday, or whatever we're going to call it. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. Press 1, and that puts you in queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, dear heart. And actually, maybe somebody will come up with a name for us for our Wednesday shows. It'll be about addiction healing. And so maybe there's a better term out there that somebody's brain will come up with. The best one mine's come up with so far is just addiction healing. And so that's where we're going to head. And we had an awesome series on addiction and the 12-step programs in particular. With some input from Dr. Andraki out in Pahrump, Nevada, back a couple of weeks ago, and those links are on our homepage at www.whyagain.org. And we want to provide support and different perspectives on the whole idea of addiction, perhaps right down to its definition. You know, I found in some cases that people actually, don't agree with me, and it's just, I find it very shocking, but anyway, so we're going to get some different opinions, different thoughts in each direction with a conversation that has as its sole purpose, actually probably two purposes. One would be for each of us who's presenting to learn and to create support for anyone who's dealing with any form of addiction or any form of disorder of any kind, anything that's out of harmony with human life. We want to create a space of healing for it. And so the definition that I use for addiction that fits with the why is this happening to me again work is that it is the compulsive use of any person, circumstance, substance, or activity to keep from doing two things. One, from hearing and following our highest guidance. I think a lot of people shut down. It's sometimes been called conscience, shut down conscience. I heard one person who said, I tried to drown my troubles and the little buggers learned to swim. So we sometimes have a conscience that tells us differently, but we have those other thoughts that conflict. And I think that we can drown out the voice of guidance with a substance, any form of addictive behavior. And the other is, of course, to anesthetize pain. And so one of the components of addiction from the perspective I'm speaking from, and we'll hear from others and see if they have any other thoughts, but one of the components is that of denial. And we kind of have, I think, a different definition than most people hold of denial in this work, where most people think of denial as, well, something happened and I said it didn't, and I'm in denial. But a little different perspective on it is that in this work, the denial that we really want to deal with is the propensity to think or speak as though somebody else is the cause of what's happening inside of me. And the impact of denial is that because of the way the human mind works, my mind always follows the words I give it in constructing its reality. Reality is nothing more than a construct of the mind. And so when I say, you made me mad, you hurt me, you have a problem, I'm telling my mind with my words that it has to show me a picture where you're the problem in my life, and that leads to codependence. So the addiction work and codependence, and again, we have a slightly different definition of codependence probably than most people do in the traditional treatment world, and that is that codependence is simply, I think you're the cause of what's happening inside of me. It's your fault that I'm feeling this. And what happens when we do that, my take, and this is what leads to addictive behavior primarily, is that when I think or speak as though you're the cause of what's happening inside of me, that which is always inside of me, I have to hide from myself. we've got a test we've developed for how to tell whether or not what I'm feeling is mine or not. And the test is, it's pretty complicated, pretty difficult to apply, but with a little effort you can do it. How do I tell if what I'm feeling is mine or not? I'm feeling it. That's all I need to know. So if I'm feeling something and I'm telling you that you're cause, I'm telling you you're cause because my construct, my perception is showing me that you're cause, which means I'm now cut off from or dissociated from cause inside of me. If I'm dissociated from the cause of my pain, I can't resolve my pain. And so pain tends to build and build and build to the point where it seems to be unresolvable because what I've hidden from myself, how do I change? How do I fix it? And so the two, the codependence and the addiction, tend to go hand in hand. And when we're talking about addiction, we're talking about anything that I use to keep from hearing and following my guidance or to anesthetize my pain. There are lots of beliefs, and certainly contrary opinions are most welcome. We're here to understand, to learn, and grow together as a community, and to create a community that's based in respect and love. There's a certain set of words that in the Aramaic were spoken that had one meaning, and the Greeks translated as the kingdom of heaven. And in Aramaic, those words translate to community of love, and that's what we're looking to develop here in this work of why is this happening to me again. So my view is that all addiction is rooted in dissociated pain. And people tend, my experience in the last 45 or so years of working with people tend, when they have pain that they don't know is there. Now that could leave some people in confusion because how could you know you or not know you have pain? Well, here's an example. You ever put on a wool sweater and when you put it on your bare skin, it's itchy? And after 15 or 20 minutes, the itch goes away. Or so we think it does. But remember 8 hours later when you took that wool sweater off? Oh, God, everything's itchy. Boy, does it ever feel good to have that off. The whole time the itch was there, the mind just adjusted it out of awareness. When we live in denial and dissociation, we adjust things out of awareness. And, again, here's the key component. From where I sit, and I'll be interested to hear Dr. Andraki's, Tim's, Gail's, anyone and everyone else's thoughts in this regard. But when I have that pain I've dissociated from and I don't know it's there, and I find a toxic substance that weakens me sufficiently that I don't feel that pain, I experience that as relief from pain I didn't know was there. And I say, this is good stuff. I like this. Even though it's ultimately killing me. Cancel the thought. So, I learned this one in particular from a woman I used to have a private practice in South Florida, and there was this woman who was a housewife, and her husband was a very successful businessman. And 7 days a week, when he got home late in the evening from work, they would have a couple of drinks before dinner, a bottle of wine with dinner, and 3 or 4 drinks after dinner. They weren't alcoholics, but she decided when she started doing this work that she was going to stop using alcohol. And as it turned out, over a period of about 5 years, she never touched any alcohol. And she shared with me in a private session that she had gone to a party one night after about 5 years of no alcohol, and someone offered her a drink of liquor. And she's like, oh, sure, I'll have one. And she said that that drink no more than got past her lips, and it felt like razor blades in her kidneys. And I'd offer that when I have pain that I don't know is there, and I'm relieved of that pain, then I think that this is good. Well, what it's doing is tearing up my kidneys and my whole tissue structure. So I believe that's the root. That's what, from where I sit, the root of addiction. And what I found is that the contribution that first century Aramaic forgiveness can make is that it collapses. When it's effectively used, it collapses the whole cycle of denial, dissociation, and blame and projecting everybody else. And it puts people right square into the root energy of their pain and the memories that go with it. Now, what happens is, and if you have tapped in, if you've used the wake-up sheet, the reality management wake-up sheet, then you see that in step 4, before you do the core step of forgiveness, in step 4, you purposely, consciously bring forward the active presence of love. And so when you do the action step in step 5 of canceling whatever the goal is that's driving the energy of pain to produce the construct called our reality or our perception, that whole thing collapses in on itself. And when you collapse in on that to its root and you bring love with it, those energies transmute. Those energies are literally changed. You know, one of the basic laws of the universe is, and it's a big mouthful, the perpetual transmutation of radiant energy. That energy is always changing from one form to the other, to another, to another. You know, the sun shines on a plant, the plant converts it with chlorophyll into usable energy for the plant, and we eat it, and what we're really eating is sunshine. And that's a transmutation of energy, a change from one form to another. When active love is brought to the root energy of pain, because pain is based in falsehood, the pain dissolves, that's all. There's a transmutation. And so it's all an energetic process, and the idea is to have a meeting of anything you've dissociated from and the conscious active presence of love. And when those two things meet, that's where healing happens. And so that's what we're here to talk about today and get some perspectives on. And I understand that Dr. Andraki is with us, and I'm not sure how long he can be with us. So I'm going to go to Dr. Andraki, and he's going to give us a medical perspective on what he does in working with addiction out in Pahrump, Nevada. And that's kind of a specialty that Dr. Andraki is with, as well as bringing forgiveness to people in his clinic, where he actually, on a weekly basis, he and his wife Claudia do support groups working with the forgiveness process. And so we really appreciate your awareness and your presence, Dr. Andraki, and willingness to share with us some of the medical perspectives and the work that you're doing with addiction. Welcome. Glad you're here. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, and I'd love to have any thoughts you have on the introduction and how it fits with you. And then, you know, you were sharing earlier today when we talked that you'd like to share perhaps some medical perspectives on your work with addiction.
Very good. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to try and continue to bring options for people who have problems, and we all do, in a way that I found to be very helpful. I'd like to at least at the first part of this and for the future is to lay out I'm an allopathic doctor, which means that I do regular medicine. We believe in surgery when necessary, with testing, with vaccines, and with medications. So we're not here to discuss the points of non-traditional medicines and allopathic medicines. I'd rather try and talk about the opportunity to integrate these different thoughts into a way that is going to fit people's desires. I've gone to medical school. I have training in family medicine, and I've been practicing for over 30 years. I also have a certification of involves written testing, involves meeting standards for addiction medicine. It was an arduous path to understand how addiction can form, treatment options, and the complexities of addiction. So we go into the neurobiology, into the best information we have currently on how addictions can develop in the brain and associations with addictions, and how we can best treat those addictions. Now, what I'm going to be speaking about and offering cannot be construed as medical advice. These are difficult problems. I'm going to give my thoughts on the matter. However, I cannot say what's necessary in your circumstance. I'd also like to say that when we're talking about addictions, the addiction range is very, very large, everything from sex addictions to smoking, addictions, alcohol, tranquilizers, benzos, opiates, internet. It goes on and on. But the most dangerous addictions to deal with in my world is alcohol and benzos, the diazepines, which are tranquilizers, Xanax, and things like this. And in my world, those are difficult to taper down from and can cause death when they're stopped suddenly. People have gone into seizures with alcohol as well as with stopping Valiums and Xanax. So we don't recommend, and I'm not certainly recommending that you stop those immediately. Obviously, you're not going to die if you stop smoking, and you almost always never die when you stop opiates, such as heroin, pills, pain pills. But in many cases, you feel like you want to die. So I'd like to make it clear that I'm going to offer perspective, and I will assist people as best as I can with information that I have. But in the big picture of things, I support what Michael has brought forward, and I met Michael over 20 years ago, and I've integrated his program into my program. Now, we have a support group on Friday nights, and everybody is welcome. You do not have to have addiction problems to be present. As a matter of fact, sometimes there's only a few people with addiction problems. Everybody is welcome because we all have issues and problems. And I found this to be very beneficial. And quickly, I'll say that when I was dealing with patients who had problems, I had no other way to help them. I can't make them do anything. I've listened to Deepak Chopra. I've gone to his workshops. I've been trained in medical hypnosis. I have the full pharmacy full of medications. I can use motivational speaking, but I can't make anybody do anything. Because what I can do is to assist people who want to change. So I've dealt with people on a regular basis who come in and say, I need to, I want to stop heroin, I have to stop heroin, I have to stop these pills, I'm going to lose my kids, et cetera, et cetera. But really, when somebody comes in and says that they want to, that they need to, that they have to, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me that they're coming and saying that they want to or they need to. Michael, at this point, would you like to say something about the intention when somebody comes in and wanting to do something versus doing it?
Well, I think that the mind can play all kinds of games. I would love to hear your definition of addiction, how perhaps it compares with the definition I gave earlier, and just see how that fits. But, wanting is telling the mind that someday I could possibly do this, as opposed to, okay, facing up to what do I need to do? What am I ready to do in order to change what I'm doing in my life, especially if it involves any form of addiction? That'd be my thought.
Well, addiction is one of the ways that the human mind, or you use human a little bit different than I do, but the male or female's mind goes out of control, basically. And we can say this by giving an example. How many people would say, I'm going to lose weight, or I want to lose weight, or I need to lose weight, and I'm going to stop eating chocolate, or I'm just going to stop drinking sodas. So part of your mind is saying, I'm going to do this, and part of your mind is obviously not cooperating with that part of your mind that you're hearing. That's self-talk, and we're going to call that the conscious mind, and that happens on a regular basis, maybe 2 times. Mind is talking to you. Probably your mind is talking to you right now. It's saying that this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, I don't understand this, or the things to do. So that's self-talk. That's going in the back of your head, and that's more linked with consciousness. Whereas a subconscious mind, which has a better control of everything that's going on around you, that never sleeps, that's there in the night with your dreams, it's there driving your decisions in the day and where you're going to go and what you're going to do, is much more powerful. So when you have a behavior that it's actually broken down into the diagnostic criteria, meeting certain criteria, where this addiction is when you have a desire that interferes with your social structures, that you want to cut down but are unable to, that takes a considerable amount of time out of your life trying to acquire that or substances, that has unwanted side effects, that people have advised you to that you don't want to take their advice, that can lead to withdrawal type of symptoms. There's a long list of criteria. And when you meet that criteria, you can meet it in a variety of ways. You can mild, moderate, or severe type of addiction. It's basically saying that you have lost control over some desire that you have, whether it's internet porn, whether it's gambling, which we see a lot in Nevada, where it's legal, where you have uncontrolled alcohol use, where you wake up with a hangover and still go back to drinking, where you have to go buy heroin from a street and you want to stop because it's going to land you in jail or an overdose, etc., that you continue to use it. That's an addictive type of behavior. Basically, you can say something that you want to stop or something that is unhealthy that you are unable to control. Does that help with addiction, and do you agree with that, Michael?
Great. Yeah, fits perfectly for me. And I don't know if you were on the show where Dr. Tim shared the addiction therapist that he knew, who, when it came to the first step, for instance, and we'll bring in some 12-step work too, the first step of I'm powerless over alcohol, and people don't want to claim that powerlessness, and the therapist that Tim was sharing with us, and I thought it was hilarious and very effective, and I've actually used it a couple of times since then in just the last few weeks, is that he reaches into his drawer and pulls out a box of X-Lax and says, here you go. Chow it down. Now let's see how much power you've got over it. Once it's in the body, not much control, and what does it lead to? So I thought that was kind of a humorous but very effective way of showing people that there are some things, once we put them in the body, that we're powerless over. And for many people, alcohol is certainly one of them. Or porn. It was interesting. I was reading some reports on porn a little while back, and they were trying to do controlled research, but they couldn't find enough, and particularly with men, they couldn't find enough young men who weren't watching porn to create a control group. That it's so prevalent, the internet porn. And the impact of that addiction on relationships, on the brain, on physiology is monumental. So it's a really, I think, misunderstood by the average person, not realized to be an addiction, and the impact that it has is just really tragic in relationships.
Well, take, for instance, pornography. How can someone be addicted to pornography? Well, it goes back to the brain structure, and we understand certain parts of the brain. That's neurofunctioning, neurobiology, and this is much easier to study these days when we have ways to image the brain and activity in the brain. So certain areas will light up when given proper injections into the proper machine. I'll leave it at that. But, for instance, we have an innate drive to reproduce. We have a sexual drive, libido, and we need to do this. This is part of our behavior to propagate, to be able to continue our species lines. This is, of course, necessary in all species, or they are no longer here. So we have this, but we are able to excite that area, and it's just like lifting weights. If I lift the weight with my right arm, a barbell every day, my muscles are going to get stronger, my muscles are going to work better. If you continue to exercise those circuits in the brain that are controlling certain areas from other areas, those get bigger, and they're going to preferentially carry the electrical pulse going to that area. So you develop this, it's called plasticity of the brain, that your brain is able to change. We see amazing things that people who have strokes are able to retrain themselves, or people who have had tumors removed are able to train themselves. And people who have addictions have trained their mind to work in a way that becomes really easy to go to and really important. So I've heard one medical doctor say that alcohol and drugs becomes your God in your brain, in the frontal part of your brain, that is the most important thing that supersedes everything. So when you have something that strong in your mind that becomes your God, the most important the most highest focus that you can have in your brain, then of course you have a problem with deciding to stop that and taking the steps to stop that, because it takes a long time to undo those circuits. And so he estimated, and he was practicing a lot longer than I have, that it takes a year of abstinence before you're able to get the circuits back into normal working condition without having that area to go to on a regular basis and to be stimulated. So that becomes more normal to you than if you didn't have that. Now, in integrating your work with addiction work, so many people come in and they have lost their self-identity. They have a God in their brain. They have an interest, and their most interest is not their children, is not their spouses, and certainly not their job anymore, is trying to get the drug that makes them feel either normal or makes them feel better. And that's a subject for the future, is how these drugs are working. Do they make you feel normal because you are withdrawing from them, or do they make you feel better because you're drowned out, or you're numbed up as a result of this? Or do they make you euphoric, or do they make you really feel good? And it could be a combination of any of those type of or even more thoughts in the mind. But the fact is that they have lost who they are, they've lost what the direction is, and they have to get back to something. They have to get back to basis. So the two best choices we have are AA, which is or the 12-step programs, where they have a set program of going through the steps and undoing a lot of things, and that helps a lot of people. Or starting with an ideology, starting with a basic fact, starting with something that they can connect to. And this is the first step that we do in our support group, and what we constantly remind people of is who they are and where they started from. And I know of no other way, I've never heard it another way than the way that you express it, that we are loved, that we started this way, and we can reconnect this way. And if anybody has had children, that it's easy to get back to that place in their mind. And this is as you just said in your introduction, this is the basis for all the work that we need to integrate the expression of love, who we are, and how we operate into everything, and actually bring love into ourselves, and bringing the essence of love into working towards sobriety or working to addiction is a very simple concept. But it is, as you know, as you express, it takes a lot of work, and as I've seen in my own practice, it takes a lot of work, a lot of focus for people to integrate back to that, because you've really lost that. Now, if somebody has a different program, then that's wonderful, but I don't know of something that's more basic than who we are, how we were when we were born, and what makes us feel the best under any circumstance. Anything that's going on is holding your newborn baby, getting a hug from your mother, or holding your mother or your father, whoever it was that was your grandparents that were most important to you. That's the essence that we have to start from, and that we work from, and that we want to return to. And I just know of no other way that's any better than looking at that and returning to that whenever we're having issues or problems.
You know, a couple of things on what you've just said is one that, this medical doctor you were talking about, that it takes a year to reset the brain circuits. And I know that over the years of doing this work, in order for people to really start to make more than just surface changes. I've seen people in very short times make some surface changes, and it's powerful and it changes people's lives. But in the long haul, my observation is that to really shift into deeper gut level work, it takes about 5 years of consistent, persistent work to make that movement take place. And the other thing, we talked a little bit a few minutes ago about pornography addiction. And I think one of the things that people don't comprehend, and I want to bring it up, so if there's anybody who's listening that has that as a challenge or has children, to explain to them the really what I consider the most deleterious effect of pornography is that the real relationship, the sweetness, the beauty of real relationship with another human being is one of the most awesome gifts we could possibly have. And the deepening of that relationship, the culture puts us in all kinds of directions, but the deepening of that relationship and the physical intimacy or sexuality in relationship, I think is one of the most awesome gifts that we've been given as human beings. And what I've observed happening with people when I've worked with people who have sexual addiction or pornography addiction is that what happens is the most important sex organ is the brain. And when people, flash through with the Internet's availability now, back a few decades ago it was maybe a Playboy magazine, but, you can only do so much with a Playboy magazine. But with the Internet, people can go to every kind of bizarre sexuality that is imaginable, and I mean imaginable, in a matter of 10 minutes. And the stimulation to the brain and the chemistry created in the brain like that, or by that, there is no relationship that can compare with that. And I think the problem is, and it takes time to reset the brain, in my understanding, for people to come down from that to where they could actually have an actual, real, true, honest, intimate relationship with another human being. And if what one is expecting is, image after image of, bizarre sexuality, watching, looking at every kind of, behavior that's possible, click, 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 that there's no relationship that can match that. And people don't realize that they are destroying their brain's potential to actually engage truly, deeply, in a truly satisfying, intimate way, a relationship with another human being. And I think that, with the Internet out there, and I think educating children that to their sexuality is important, especially today because of the availability of stimulation from the Internet, and getting them to recognize that the brain is the key in sexual interaction, and that with the overstimulation of what pornography on the Internet brings, leaves people really without the capacity for relationship, and that's a major tragedy in people's lives, I think. How does that fit with your understanding, Steve?
Well, of course, I think that it works in most things. If you look at all of the things that you describe, if we're sweetness and if we're love, then we remove ourselves when we use other substances. We're getting to the same endpoint as what we talk about pornography. We're not expressing ourselves as we should, and expressing ourselves in another way, through intoxication or through some sort of stimulation. Obviously, there's stimulation when you consume sugar. I mean, there's no secret that if you eat sugar, that it's going to have an effect on how you move. You can get lazy. You get what's called a sugar high, or you can get active. And so it's causing something other than the natural experience that we should be. Runners can do that as well. I mean, you can be addicted to running. You can run to the unhealthy levels of problems, and that can be unhealthy. But we're talking about a healthy balance. You can have alcohol in a healthy moderation, but we're talking about something that's excessive. Then we're talking about something that's disruptive, and it's something that our mind is fooling us. Our mind is lying to us. It's saying that we're going to continue to do this despite the fact that we may know better, despite the fact that we know that it's not good for us. Then that's where we get into the addiction, when it takes up, it meets the criteria of needing more and more of it, that desire to stop and unable to stop, that it's taking up too much of your time so that you're losing your social interactions or your commitments for to interact with other people or events. Then that's where we see addictions. It meets the definition. And it's in so many different arenas that the only way that we can really define how we should be is the sweetness and essence of love, and that is how we should be living our life. Anything else that's beyond that is really not to our benefit. And I've heard you describe this, and I hope I'm describing it accurately, Michael, because I've heard for many years you describing this, and that really is who we are, who we deserve to. It's our legacy, it's our birthright, and we still don't understand that. We still, our subconscious mind is taking us into a different direction. But if we can understand that no matter who you are, no matter what you've been through, no matter what's happened to you, and the terrible things that I've heard and that you've heard, and the craziness I've heard with drug addiction, it doesn't matter. I've had one person who I was attempting to treat for addictive behavior, says, you can't imagine the bad things that I've done. And when he has it in his mind that he is a bad person, there's little chance that he's going to be able to heal internally, so he no longer needs these drugs. Now, he's telling me that I've got such bad stuff, I need to continue using drugs to numb me up. But the first step is understanding that you can return to who you are, that you are still that person. You've got to remove a lot of layers. So when it all comes down to it, Michael, I think that you express it best, and it works in every situation, and that we need to return on who we really are. And if we can do that, so many things get better, and then we're not even talking about alcohol or drugs.
Absolutely. And one of the other, I think, really key addictions that is rampant in our culture, and all you have to do is watch a political debate to see how common it is, even at that level, which, people hold these folks in high esteem when, in fact, it may be misplaced esteem, but hostility. Anger is such a powerful and seductive mistress for people, much like alcohol, and it totally changes brain chemistry and totally anesthetizes pain. And my experience over the years of working with people in an intensive, we'll oftentimes purposely, consciously stir people's rage and hostility until it blows, and then if we can introduce the presence of love and get somebody to take a breath and just for a second, just for an instant, to let go of that hostility, right underneath it is such extreme pain that in some cases it's unbelievable. I mean, just beyond conception. Some of the stories I've heard, and as you say, I know you've heard them too, the things that have happened to people, the things that people have had done to them, the things that people have done are just unbelievable. And when we can introduce active love, and for the addict at first, it's pretty much impossible for them to do it for themselves. And so an intervention looks like a care provider, the person who's there as support, whether it's yourself, it's a priest, a minister, a rabbi, me, a therapist that's there as that space, that active presence of love really becomes the key healer and opens a space for the person who's stuck in addiction to really truly start to identify with and literally on an energetic level resonate the love that they are, so that can start to come in and provide healing from within one's own skin. I think that's really a process as well. But that hostility game is such a powerful, seductive form of addiction. And the other one is busyness. The busyness of the culture, so much of that is addiction. It's a way, something's coming up I don't want to feel, let me go get busy. The same way as people, let me go grab a fifth of scotch, let me get to the refrigerator, let me get to the heroin, whatever. It's, I'll get up and get busy. And I was actually talking to someone this morning, it was actually a person who's an attorney, and they had a major brief that they needed to file. And one of the things this person was saying is, I hate cleaning, and I've been needing to have this brief filed for over a week, and my house is so spotless. They literally, their addiction was to get busy cleaning the house. And, they don't like cleaning, but it was better than facing what they needed to face in filing this brief and the stresses involved internally in that. So it's interesting the number of things that can become an addiction and a way to avoid the truth of what's going on.
Well, all there's different permutations, and there's never going to be a lack of new things that we hear of how people are coping with their issues. And you mentioned it, but I think that we have to consider how often do we sit with ourselves in a quiet environment on a daily basis, or do we even do that at all? Do we do it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? How many times do we sit and experience the expression of love? How many times do we actually close our eyes and feel the hug and the love of our mother, or holding onto a child? We have so many other things that are going on, and I think it's just the integral part of who we are and how society has so many options for us not to look at this. And I think if anybody wants to start to heal and start to know themselves and start to connect with themselves, that's going to be part of it. You're going to have to put some time away on a daily basis to sit in quietness, to experience love as a regular practice, and to do the work as you describe on a daily basis, and how to do that work to get back to who we really are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting that, when we did the series on AA and addiction and such back a few weeks ago, and there are links on the front of the page of the website to that, Gail was sharing with us that the root of the 12-step program, interestingly enough, is the first century teachings of Yeshua, which, were, if not Greek, if not Aramaic at that point, they were certainly close enough, and that the several of the original steps came out of that. And of course, one of the steps Yeshua gives, if you go back and listen to him, he says, you got to go into the closet and close the door. I don't think he was talking about isolating ourselves in a little tiny room in the house. He was talking about getting to that space. And, in the Laws of Living class, we introduce a worksheet. We also introduce it in our Getting the Stress You Need mind goal management. And morning and night, we suggest at least 5 minutes of just quiet, connected breathing and connecting to love. And if you do that, that tends to grow and tends to expand. So, and we've got a couple of other folks on the line with us. So let's say a quick hello to Dr. Tim and see if he's got any perspectives to share on the conversation so far, and some ideas to add to the conversation. Dr. Tim?
Well, I'm enjoying the conversation, and I'd rather have us move over to somebody like Gail or somebody else who has actually been integrating this work with the 12-step stuff. And I'll just say once again, while Dr. Andraki's on the phone, the wonderful summary about functional medicine that can be found on onbeing.org, and the December 3rd show is a great place to go to get wonderful perspective from medical doctors and philanthropists about what it really takes to do human healing. And beyond that, you're in an area where I have lots of training but no personal experience, so I'd love to hear from somebody who's actually worked with this, integrating your work and the 12-step stuff.
Cool. And once again, Tim, thanks for introducing that show to us. It is awesome. And you can go to onbeing.org and just look up the December 3rd show, and there's a free archive of it, and you can listen to it. And basically, what we've been working with people for decades, this medical doctor who himself was dying from mercury poisoning and could find no answers, and he comes up in the conversation with the psychiatrist and this philanthropist you're speaking of with 4 things that are necessary for healing. And those 4 things were community, forgiveness, love, and proper nutrition. So pretty cool and powerful presentation of that on being.org. And Gail, how are you, young lady? Are you with us, Gail? Is your mute button on?
I am. Can you hear me?
You're loud and clear now. Hey, welcome, young lady.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I did have my mute button on.
I know how that goes. I've been mute challenged before, too.
Gotcha. Just enjoying the conversation as well. Spending some time with my grandson while my daughter goes to class. She's taking classes at the community college around here, and he is working on a puzzle, so we're having a good time together and listening to the conversation.
Well, anything to add at this point? We're down to a few minutes, and so I'd love to get any perspectives or thoughts you have to add to expand the conversation, to bring emphasis to parts of the conversation that you found to be particularly important in the work you've done.
I really don't have anything to add at this point in time. I did appreciate the discussion about pornography. I think that is very important to address. It's a billion-dollar industry. It's so pervasive in this country and so easily accessible and so easy, I believe, to become addicted. So I'm appreciating the conversation that is opening up and exploring that.
I don't think the culture has yet started to appreciate the impact on the family, on parent-child relationships, on husband and wife relationships. I don't think that it's even started to appreciate the impact of that addiction. There is a really powerful film which I suggest people watch, and one of the most interesting parts of the film that I see, and the movie is called Thank You for Sharing, and it's about sexual addiction, but it brings in alcohol and drugs as well. And really interesting to see how they captured in the film each time that one of the people in the film is getting ready to fall off the wagon, and it's a very realistic portrayal, the first place they go is to hostility. And that when the hostility isn't enough, when denial doesn't work and dissociation isn't enough to hide the pain, then hostility is used, my take is, as a drug. And then when that drug doesn't work, as much as people try to resist their alcohol or their sex addiction and bizarre behaviors, that hostility is like one of the earliest signals. One of the participants, one of the actors in the movie has a giant struggle with staying away from just bizarre sexual addiction. And you can just watch his hostility build, and where he's going to, tip and fall over the edge is where the hostility isn't enough of an anesthetic. So I think it's a pretty powerful film if you haven't seen it, and it's a good one to breathe through and have worksheets available. So, and I understand that Terry Bowling is with us too. So let's say hello to Terry and see if Terry has any thoughts or anything to add to the conversation. Terry?
Hey, Michael.
Hey, welcome, sir.
Can you hear me?
How do you be?
All right.
You're loud and clear.
I'll be well.
You're loud and clear.
I'll be very well. Yeah, this is a great conversation.
Fabulous.
I know we're down to just a few minutes, so there's not really space to open up a whole lot of things. We've got coming 9 minutes. Coming from the place of working through some addictions and coming up on 30 years of abstinence next month, the next couple of weeks actually. It's a pretty big milestone. At one point in my life I never, ever imagined would happen. And knowing, watching and growing and participating and keeping tied to that program, and yet at the same time using the 12-step as a way to expand and ever seek out and expand our conscious contact with God, however we understand that, allows me to step in and explore any other modalities, any and all of the modalities, and tie them together. And over the years, I've never found anything that has what I call the core thread of truth to conflict with each other. They all can say the same things and just use a little different language,
Right. Of course, language and then the tools to work through the underlying issues, I think, becomes such an important part of the process.
Yes, each one of them has a set of tools, and there's been people who have reached enlightenment or understanding through each process, and I think that's why they say there's many paths to the mountaintop, and some of them are a lot shorter and a lot clearer and easier than others, and yet, allowing each person to walk his own path is just an honor, coming from a space of love, and being support is important. There's a saying that goes around in the 12-step penance in the community where talking about the 5 years now, and they started using it quite a bit, where they said when someone reaches the 5-year mark, you can hear a loud popping sound. They said that's when their head's popping out of their butt, so to speak. So they're in alignment with that. Yes. So,
okay, I hadn't heard that one, Terry, but that kind of that fits.
So that was a way to kind of let it known to the folks that you may have 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, but you're still the real work's just beginning, and it's right in alignment with what you guys were talking about, that 5-year period, to really integrate and with folks who have come through some pretty heavy and brutal addictions. This is a long nurturing process. Because I've been every kind of sponsor that there is out there, the rough, tough, the hardcore, the mean, the love, those different ones, and I kind of settled on a style where I just meet the individual wherever they're at and help them grow as fast as they're willing to through the next levels. And that's been working real well. And I work with a lot of guys, and some of them can adapt and grab onto this. These concepts at a larger level than others. They all kind of get, a little piece of it on, but depending on if they're 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, they have cleared up some stuff that allows them to start to embrace some broader and deeper work. The essence that I've come to agree upon, and this is with my most recent sponsor, is that there's only one cure for addiction, and that's to stop using the substance, period. And I remembered when I crossed a threshold that I could not use anymore, that the brain had been programmed with enough pathways so that I couldn't not use. I had to use, and it was a total place of despair, I guess. And that went on for a couple of years before I actually was able to stop using the substance. And that made sense to me. And then what's been shared with me is that all addicts are codependent by nature. And then there's two aspects of the disease of addiction. There's the addiction itself to the substance, and there's only one cure, and there's really no cure for that. It's just a daily reprieve. Because once you put that substance back in, then those brain waves open up and fire off, and you're back and running again. So you just have to stop using. And sometimes that requires medical detox, like the good doctor was referring to earlier. That there's a lot of can be some danger and all that, depending on where the person has been, but you got to get him cleaned up first, so to speak. Then you can start working on all the codependent issues. And I love the definition I have of codependence is whenever I put any person, place, or thing, past, present, or future, real or imagined, in front of my own well-being. And my own well-being in the YGAM work is staying connected to love. So anytime I put anything in front of staying connected to love, I'm then in a codependent relationship with that anything.
That sounds right on. I'm certainly in agreement with that, and it's interesting to watch the levels and the layers that people go through, and people embrace and love and want the tools and want to use the tools until they're ready to drop into the next deeper layer, and then the resistor takes over again, and it takes time to work through that resistance and go back to what really works to start to clean up the next layer. And I think sometimes that means that it's really moving in the direction of, and I don't know what the noise is in the background. It sounds like there's some tools moving or something. But that it really means going to the next level, which oftentimes I think is touching into the genetic component, the energetic dynamics of the generations in addiction. And that's a huge piece to open and start to breathe through and start to move through.
Yes, I think Yes, and what came to thought was to my mind that movie you talked about, and one of my favorite movies is Robin Williams, and What Dreams We Dream, and how if he would go open up to that next layer, it would just become almost overpowering. It just really would get into it, and that has been my experience as I go into deeper levels. Is that my mind is going crazy, and it's like if I haven't laid the foundation and built the brain cells and established agreements and commitments and done work on a consistent basis over long periods of time, then when the resistance does come up, then it's going to, there's the potential to stay in that resistance for a lot longer. You agree?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the movie you're referring to with Robin Williams is What Dreams Will Come. And it is a very powerful metaphor for addiction. And, as his wife is lost in her pain, that they warn him, if you go in there, you'll get trapped and you'll never get out. And, that is how addiction tends to feel. And it's so awesome to me that we have so many people who are coming together with different levels of understanding and different tools that can help to untie us from all of those things and free us from it. So it's pretty powerful. And we are down to the last minute or so. I would love to have had a couple of minutes for everybody to wind up, but it looks like the clock just ran away here. And so I'm going to just say thank each of you for your input. That's an awesome first show on healing addiction. And we'll look forward to next Wednesday. And tomorrow's show, we'll move forward, and we may continue with the conversation. We'll see where it goes. But in the meantime, we appreciate everybody's input and participation. I hope it's been of service to you. And we're here 5 days a week, an hour a day for a personal conversation for support. So tap in, bring a stranger to the show, create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters